Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gabesy here. This is the Heroic DPS guide for Iron Juggernaut. And this video should assist DPS players with all the basics they need to know about this encounter on Heroic difficulty. So let's do this. The first thing to be aware of is the new ability during the Assault mode, or the main phase of the fight, called Ricochet. And this is a spinning blade attack that's launched from the left side of the boss, basically where his spinning blade is from his arm there. And it will shoot out toward two random ranged raid members. It goes in a straight line toward the first target, and then it will take a curved path if necessary to reach the second random target before it goes back to the boss's location. When this occurs, the best thing you can do is to sidestep it briefly in case it's coming toward you. It travels very quickly, but you can avoid it if you move when it's traveling. Now, if you're a ranged DPS, you'll be a frequent target of this ability, but if you're a melee DPS, you should be able to position on the side of the boss, the right side generally, so that the blade is never a risk and doesn't actually come across your path. So melee DPS should not have to worry about this new mechanic. Now, other than the new Ricochet mechanic, all the other stuff is the same as on normal difficulty, but it's just important that you do your best to avoid any avoidable damage as a DPS on this phase. There's a lot of damage going out, particularly on the tanks as well, so less strain on your healers will mean more success overall. Probably the most important thing to avoid is the earthquakes that will shoot out from the boss. These occur just before the Ricochet attack, so when you see the warning for the earthquake, be aware that the Ricochet will shoot out and actually travel to you much faster. Then after the Ricochet is done, the earthquake waves will start to move toward you. Again, they target ranged raid members preferably, and they'll kind of chase you, so stay spread out and watch closely for those graphics. And if they come toward you, sidestep them unless they're chasing you, in which case you'll have to run slightly away from them. So I just do kind of a loop if necessary to avoid those. And if they're passing by you and going for someone else, then you shouldn't have to really move once they're past you. Now for the siege mode, there are two basic strategies that your raid may implement, and I'll talk about both of those briefly and how it will change what you're doing. So if you're using the method that we are using here in the video, this basically will force your raid to be far away from the boss during siege mode, such that you're not able to DPS during this period. However, the advantage is that you are out of range of the new mechanic for this fight on Heroic, for this phase rather, which is the mortar barrage. So you may see in the background a number of red rings, which are where the mortars are landing, and these have a maximum range of about 50 or 60 yards. So if you're far enough away from the boss, you don't have to avoid those. This means if you're doing this method, you simply stay in the corner here with the rest of the raid and do your best to mitigate damage, move the laser out if it targets you, use a personal cooldown when the shock blast hits, because it hits very hard, and otherwise help clean up the crawler mines when possible. If, on the other hand, you're using the strategy that allows you to keep DPSing the boss during siege mode, then you'll want to do your best to dodge the mortar barrage hits, as getting hit by those will do a ton of extra damage that you really can't afford to take. So, just depending on your strategy, adjust accordingly, but if you cannot DPS, then it's simply a matter of doing your best to help survive and deal with the mines. Make sure you don't soak up mines until after the second shock pulse goes off. Or if you do soak the mine beforehand, that you have some form of cooldown so that you don't take a bunch of extra damage. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about crawler mines. And again, mechanically these work the same as on normal, but they do need to be handled properly because on Heroic they do a lot more damage. So, as a DPS, you can often help out with this depending on your class and your personal cooldowns or gear, health pools, stuff like that. For example, what we found to work best was to have one DPS player, our balanced druid in this case, be in charge of soaking up 2 of every 3 mines that will spawn. Because she could go into bear form and therefore has a lot of health, she could easily soak up 2 of these with our off tank at the time getting the 3rd one. So this allows the rest of the raid not to have to focus on mines except during the siege mode, and they can just keep DPSing or healing whatever needs to be done. So, as a DPS, again, depending on your own abilities, you may be able to assist in the same way by soaking up 2 of every 3 mines that spawn. Otherwise, just figure out the rotation within your raid group and do that as appropriate. So that is the overall fight. It's pretty simple mechanically. As always, good luck, and thanks for watching.